Hey guys, it's Mitch. How's it going? So it seems I've got something to celebrate. A couple days ago, I was hovering around 980 subscribers, and a viewer was kind enough to point out, "Hey, you're kind of getting close to 1,000 there. You plan on doing anything for that?" I'm like, "Oh shit, yeah, I should do that." I just kind of got tunnel vision for just doing the next video, and I was like, "Okay, well, I probably have a week or two to sort that out." So I'll put something together. And like I said, that was 2 days ago. Now I'm at 992. So it's kind of like, oh shit, that could flip over tomorrow. I better get going on this. So first off, I'd like to say thank you to everybody who subscribed. It's kind of mind-blowing to get to this point after just over a year, really. Particularly from where I started out, which was from zero social media presence whatsoever. And I mean zero. So around end of October last year, started a new Twitter account, started a new YouTube account, had never used Instagram, and just kind of decided to go with some advice I saw on the internet, which was to just produce some pages and create some videos with sped up footage with me talking over it. Did that once a week, didn't grow very fast at all, and got a suggestion around the same time from a friend of mine that, hey, maybe it'd be a good idea to put together some videos talking about comics from around when you started getting into them. Stuff that might be kind of formative, which was an idea that I had and was kind of kicking around. So that kind of reinforced it. So to come from there to the point now where I'm putting out, 6 videos a week and a live stream, and halfway through issue 3 of a comic is kind of wild. And yeah, to have 1,000 subs, it's not really a position I expected to be in. So again, yeah, thank you very much for that. That's kind of awesome. So what I figured we do today, we go through my Jim Lee's X-Men Artist Edition. This is the only Artist Edition I have. If you're not familiar with the Artist Editions, these are produced by IDW, and they're about 200 pages of high-quality scans of original artwork, reproduced at full size. And there's probably a couple of hundred of these now, with all sorts of different artists. There's a bunch I'd like to get. There's like a Mike Kaluta one. There's a Bernie Wrightson one, apparently. There's Michael Golden. There's all sorts that I'd love to get. As it is, this is the only one so far because they do get kind of pricey. This one cost me somewhere in the neighborhood of like $200 Canadian. And this is the most common one that you can find as far as I can tell. You can usually find it for about $150 American, which says to me that they figured demand would be high, so they printed a whole bunch. And I think they probably were right, but they may have still overprinted a little bit. But that works out for me anyway. So as we go through these, I brought out my Jim Lee X-Men comics, so we'll kind of compare a little bit here and there. And we're going to start out, of course, with one of the more famous covers, I suppose, from Uncanny X-Men 268. And you can see here, this is not just black and white. You can see a little bit of the aging on the page itself. You can see things like how the title was pasted up. If you're really lucky, you can kind of see the outline of Zipatone around these shaded areas here. But this is going to be further in the book. So why don't we just get into it here? And they like to start off with some blown up images taken from various pages. Like with these, I think you don't want to see just full size. You want to see even more than that so you can get right in there. I don't remember exactly where this is from, but thankfully they usually write the issue number and the page number and all that at the top of each page. So we'll figure it out when we get to it. But you can already see the kind of detail you get with these. For instance, that all of this is whited out. And a little bit on Magneto's nose here, too. This is, of course, from X-Men #1 from 1992. And I believe that is also from Uncanny 258, maybe? I'm not sure. Again, we'll see when we get there. There's going to be a lot of Scott Williams in here, but there are other interesting inkers in here as well. So starting off, we're going to get the opening splash from Uncanny number 248. And this is by Jim Lee, inked by Dan Green. It's interesting seeing Jim Lee inked by Dan Green, really. Obviously, you mostly see Scott Williams. Dan Green, I'm mostly used to seeing inking Marc Silvestri. And there's a bit of a looseness to his lines that I'm not used to seeing over Jim Lee. It does have a bit of the flavor that I would expect from, like, mid-1991 Wolverine comic. And this is pretty early on. This is September of 1989. So this is going to be a Jim Lee that hasn't quite figured everything out yet. And you can see it a little bit in the Wolverine here. It's a fine pose, but not exactly one of his standard poses going forward. And it turns out, of course, this Wolverine is a construct. And these are the Reavers. And we get to see those screen doors up close. You know what's particularly interesting is the lack of rendering. I would expect to see more from Jim Lee, although maybe not at this point. And again, some of these faces look more like faces out of Wolverine in 91 or 92. So that's interesting to see how much of an effect Dan Green can have. All right, from there we go to Uncanny 256. That's this one here, particularly page 25. So there we go. It's interesting seeing this because some of this, like little bits of this, look like Whilce Portacio. And might be. He doesn't have a signature on here. He does often sign the pages that he had a hand in. But like that looks like a Whilce face. Like most of Psylocke here looks like Whilce to me. Interesting page to choose from this. I mean, there is an element of you kind of take what you can get and just kind of pick and choose the best from there. There's probably better pages in this, but they may just not have had access to them. This one here is from Uncanny 258, page 11. Now, this is Jubilee versus the Mandarin. Interesting to see how Zipatone ages after 30 years. And just the effect you get here versus here. And this one is Scott Williams. Okay. Again, a bit of an earlier Scott Williams. I would come in about a year and a bit after this. Oh yeah, well there you go, Scott Williams. I should just look at the pages. And you can see where the lettering is pasted up in some spots. Most of this seems to be on the page itself, but not stuff like this. Okay, this is from X-Men 267. It's interesting to see it in here because this is not Jim Lee. This is Whilce Portacio. I mean, you only have to look for a second to see it. Way more energy. I wish I knew who inked this one. So unfortunately, I don't have this one. The credit in the book credits it to Homage Studios. So this is Lee, Portacio, and Williams. I'll be honest, though, I do not see much of Jim Lee on these pages. Maybe something like this. Because this is obviously a paste-up. And it looks like the kind of thing that could be Jim. The rest of this is pure Whilce, yeah. And there's way more whiteout going on. And it looks like intentionally so, too. Well, in some spots. In some spots here, it's obviously fixing up mistakes. Here by Gambit's mouth, it looks like originally he was going for a smile. This is from the bit where Storm has been transformed magically into a child again, a preteen, around there. I gotta think a lot of this ink is Whilce. I mean, there's a sloppiness going on here that I don't associate at all with Scott Williams. In the cloak here as well, and these background buildings. Yeah, I would expect this to be completely Whilce Portacio. This one is all three, apparently. You know what? I think Jim was doing the backgrounds here. Still on 267. Why not? Stick on the ones I don't have. It's interesting to see, because some of this is faded. And I'm guessing that's the difference. Like, this stuff here is still pure black, while all this stuff has gone more gray. And I'm guessing this is Micron, because it doesn't hold up as well over the years. Same with here, same with in here. All done very quickly, which was kind of the trademark of Homage Studios at this time. You get three guys working on a comic page instead of just two, and you can crank them out. And like this panel down here, I've seen from Whilce now a bunch of times. This is definitely a Whilce kind of thing. Again, just the creativity. This is a crazy looking panel. Okay, now we're going to jump to Uncanny 268. So now we're back on familiar territory. Oh, we didn't get that page. That's a bit of a shame almost. That's okay. We did get the splash. Yeah, this is really interesting for getting a feel for the kind of lines Jim was using at the proper scale. Because there's only so much you can get from the comics themselves, where there's still an element of guesswork about, okay, but how tight are these lines really? And in some cases, pretty damn tight. But they still reproduce pretty clean. We're going to keep going here. Cap is teaming up with Wolverine. And again, we're very close to Jim Lee kind of reaching his peak. But not quite there yet. There's still a little bit of awkwardness in figures like this. And even here, this one's pretty great. And it's interesting when we get little notes in the margins here, like color, please, no color on Widow's suit unless small figure. Let's see what the difference is there. Yeah, okay. So this is just gray, like just the Zipatone. And then on the smaller suit, you can't afford to put the Zipatone in there because that'll just blank out detail. So they just do a color instead. Interesting. This is all pretty good stuff here. Solid hands. I mean, we're getting to a point pretty quickly where Jim Lee has like a template in his head for every pose he wants to use. Again, interesting to see this area here glued on and whited out. Whereas most of the rest of these are right on the page. This is from later on. Get the classic Jim Lee looking up moodily with the overhead lighting. And some of these faces don't quite look like later Jim. This looks a bit more like Art Adams even, which is, of course, one of his main influences. And we get to leap up onto the car and kicking through the windshield. And again, this pose a little bit awkward, but still pretty cool. And it's just interesting to see him picking up tricks. Some very fast inking in here too. This looks like it was done with a Sharpie. Might have been. Some of these pages are going to have to be cranked out pretty fast, which in some cases actually works in their favor because an image like this, that can lend some energy to it, some speed. There's a classic Jim Lee face. He's almost got it down. But I mean, you see the difference between this page here and then one of the Whilce pages. Like just a difference in design, a difference in movement. Even with the confidence of the figures. Oh, Giant Naked Rogue. So this is from Uncanny 269. And I mean, that's what everybody wanted to see, right? Again, interesting to see what bits ended up as paste ups here. All looks pretty clean in the finished copy, eh? Well, there's a whole bunch of signatures on this one. I think that's probably Claremont's. There's Jim. Maybe Steve Buccellato. And looks like Stan Lee also signed this. So this is probably an auction piece. And good on Jim for keeping the proportion on this. This is a tough page. Like at this size, you see, like, just compared to my hands here, it'd be very easy to lose track of just how big anything in here is supposed to be. Looks like he lost it a little bit with the face because those eyes are a little askew. But nobody's looking at her eyes anyway, though, so that's fine. And again, paste ups all over here, including whiteout under the boobs here. I wonder what that looked like originally. And moving on in 269. This is a hell of a page. Yeah, there's something about here that is still being formed. Like some of the eyes are a little too big. They retain that Michael Goldenness. But this page is excellent. Honestly, most of the art in this issue looks fantastic and a little bit beyond what I'm usually expecting from Jim Lee. This is some wild shit. I don't see Will signing any of these. And honestly, I don't know that these really look like Will's compositions. I could see Jim maybe doing this. It's pretty out there for him. And we get the climactic end to that here with the giant panel which really is giant at this scale. You know, you see it in the comic, and it's like, man, that's a big panel. And here it's like, holy shit, how did this not take forever? And then, of course, the giant ending page, well, from the end page. That is a full-on pinup where Magneto addresses Pikachu. Again, spectacular looking stuff. You can see there is a bit of a difference between this and like X-Men #1 cover Magneto. Like he gets more into the barrel chest. It feels like a bit of a better proportion. Like really, you know, realistic proportion, it's not even close. But he's not going for that. If it was realistic proportions, this would probably be the line around here maybe. And then like just kind of straight up. But that's not what we're going for, is it? Whereas this, yeah, the torso itself seems a little bit shrunken in comparison. Oh, Extinction Agenda's coming up. Just next month, actually, now that I checked the issue number again. Look at how high the page count on these gets, eh? I assume they're factoring in ads then. 6, yes. Okay, so they are factoring in ads ahead of time. Interesting. Okay, so now we get into the Extinction Agenda. Again, everything here is pasted up by the looks of it. All of the dialogue. Which to me maybe says it was mailed in. This is, of course, yeah, as I said, X-Men 270. And it's interesting to see stuff like this, where this was obviously pasted over. I wonder why this is discolored and the rest of it isn't. Like it got some kind of treatment. I don't know. It's strange. Still got Preteen Storm. I think it's around the end of Extinction Agenda that she gets brought back. And there's these Macross-looking motorcycles. So this one's done by Art T-Bear. I think this is more of a homage page here. Just judging by things like the difference in the materials used. This is all India ink. This is Microns. But yeah, this is like pure anime here. All the, you know, the super low angle on a Dutch. And these crazy fucking manga-looking unicycles. And all the speed lines. It's a great shot. So now we're on issue 271. So this guy right here. Whole bunch of Zipatone here. So it is like a clear layer. Because I can see little bits here and there where it overlaps the artwork. Okay, so that's good to know. And again, pretty good shot here. Nice and high energy. You get that low angle again. You get a bit of a Dutch to it. It makes me wonder a bit how much manga Jim Lee read as a kid. Because I didn't see as much of it in his earlier stuff. It was much more Art Adams, Michael Golden. It feels like he's introducing it right around now. And this page here, I'm not sure if this is better preserved. Or you know what? This under here might have been a photocopy with, yeah, I think that's probably what it was. This under here was probably a photocopy with the lettering pasted onto it. I had instruction here to drop red lines. So they're not done in black ink, but there's a whole bunch of drawing in here that isn't on the page. Wonder how that was done. He's almost there. Not quite. Yeah, see, I mean, you can see it in Jubilee here, how she's kind of scrunched. His hand is out of proportion. Everything, really, about Jubilee here is out of proportion. He hasn't got it all nailed down. He's got Wolverine pretty much locked down. And he's reproducing that Art Adams arm hair pretty well. Again, yeah, these are photostats, photocopies, something like that. And really tilting that camera here so that you can see as much of Psylocke as possible and make her seem kind of huge, even though, really, this is kind of a small space. And this is from later in the issue here. This is, again, kind of a classic shot of Wolverine from Jim Lee. So he's locking down those templates. And this is the kind of stuff that I really still need to work on. The way he does double lighting, it's expert. And I wish I could do it better myself. And he does the same thing here again with Psylocke. Just laying her down so that he can stretch her out and just make her a larger figure to work with. Cool looking gun, too. Okay. We're here at issue 272. And this is the big splash. Man, that does not come out nearly as well as you would hope, does it? I mean, like you can see everybody fine. So that's good. A lot of this detail work just kind of melds together when it's actually printed. It looks extremely crisp here. Whereas everything ends up like, I don't know what it is, whether it almost feels like this page itself is just badly printed, because everything here is extremely clean and not too compact. Like up here, it is way too compact, but it still melds together down here. But this is still a hell of a shot. Like Jim Lee can do a group shot, it feels like easily with little effort. Oh, again, we get those photocopied pages. Ooh, that face really had to be changed. This was originally page 12, but is now page 16. I guess they didn't account for ads right away. They managed to make that look pretty good. Or is that whiteout, or is there just a lot of blue pencil under there? You know what? I think it is just blue pencil. But yeah, no, that ended up looking pretty great. Holy God, that's a lot of arm hair. At some point, you got to just like wonder if it's worth it to put that kind of arm hair on. And I think this is Homage Studios who've got a bit. Because while this all looks like Jim, that looks a bit more like Whilce. Good stuff here. This is one of the only times I can really remember seeing a Jim Lee drawn Wolverine with his cowl here hanging off the back of him. It does look kind of silly. But you can see some of the construction lines under here that didn't erase 100%. You really just kind of went flying at him crotch first, huh? Okay. I mean, whatever gets the job done, really. Okay, now we're moving on. The only thing with this is that you don't get a lot of any particular issue, which is cool in terms of progression. But it would be nice to get the whole thing sometimes. So, we've skipped 273. Jim Lee didn't have much to do with that one. So now we're on Uncanny X-Men 274. And now we're into what I consider Jim's best work, largely because, in my opinion, Whilce is doing his layouts, at least on stuff like this. You never see Jim try this later on. And it's unbelievable how good this is. And just the layers here, like the levels of depth, and then going further down into the valley, it's absolutely wild. And, of course, came up with Rogue's best look at this time. Moving on through the Savage Land, fun stuff. X-Men fighting dinosaurs, always good. And this is, what's her name? Zanzibar. Zaladane. That one. Oh, some of these look a little Whilce. But this is just a good resource to, like, yeah, get a feel for what kind of lines should go where. Like, here's a face lit from below and to the right. And really, I mean, like, the hatching here isn't all that tough. This is actually pretty simple looking stuff, but it's extremely effective. And it's interesting to see these super techy guns at this size and to see how simplistic the construction on them is. You don't really think about it when you're looking at it. You know, it's like, and really this is a pretty small panel, so it doesn't matter. There's more than enough detail here to go around. Yeah, really not a ton of detail. I feel like I overthink it sometimes. It's not always necessary. But like overall, like the impression of line work on the page is almost overwhelming. And we get to the end of 274 where the X-Men are teleported to the Shi'ar Empire so that they can go and kill Charles Xavier for Deathbird, which is all pasted on, including the Zipatone, onto a photocopy. I think, oh, no. No, this is original. My bad. And again, the proportioning here is exact. Like, there is nothing out of place on Deathbird here. And managing to come up with different textures to keep it interesting, these little cords and everything, all these little panels on her, so that it doesn't feel like a waste of a splash. This is just spectacular. All right, so here we go Uncanny X-Men 275 Starjammers Strike, which is not the title of the issue. The title is The Path Not Taken. Unfortunately, we're not going to get this splash in here. I would have liked to see this thing. But that's okay. We're going to see plenty. This, of course, is the issue that I consider the best that Jim Lee has ever produced. And you can see it from the opening page here. He is going all out. I know that Homage Studios got together specifically for this run. And it feels like this issue was the target. Get everything out of the way, because this is a double-sized issue, and we want to make a splash on this one. So, speaking of splashes, right from the get-go, we're going to get an awesome pinup of the Starjammers. Everything's nicely shaded, like Chode here in particular, with the underlighting, looks great. Get our classic Jim Lee poses here. We had this shot here, of course, with all of the X-Men trapped in the tentacles. And you get to see just how small some of these figures are. Like, man, that would be tough to do and make it look like anything. And it all does show up in the final issue. Yeah, the printing on this is much crisper. You can even see Forge's mustache. Oh, we didn't get the shot of Wolverine going after Deathbird. Oh, well, that's okay. Yeah, this is going to be a mostly Jim page. Everything here is relatively simple in terms of the layouts. Not going too hard on anything. These here, with the helicopters, I would have assumed these were photocopies, but I can't see any evidence of that. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, maybe, no. I think maybe I can. A little bit. Just the basic shape, because the tails here are different on each of them. But I think the body is the same. That's interesting. And then with the foliage here, this looks like there's some dry brushing or something going on in there. That's pretty interesting. You don't usually see that on a finished page. And just the amount of line work going on all over the place here. It's impressive stuff. Oh, here we are at the end of the issue here. Yeah, it would have been nice to get a bit more of this, but I mean, there's a lot of ground to cover. And it looks like this was mostly a paste up. Yeah, it's kind of fascinating. Just how small these, you get 12 panels on a page. You'd get very little room to work. So it's mostly just close-ups. I don't know if it's really preferable to go this way in terms of pacing, but I mean, you don't want to stretch this out over 3 pages either. So I guess, yeah, why not? And, keep it as beat, 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 beat. And keep switching perspectives. And now we get to the end of issue 275. The lack of shading on Gladiator here. I've never noticed this before. Yeah, okay. Yeah, most of the shading is done with the colors. Again, because of the telepathic attack, I guess. He's not doing it here, obviously. I wonder if it started out as keeping the line work simple so that it wouldn't clash with the window and then just kind of going with it for the rest of this. Moving on now to issue 276. We get the great shot here with Jubilee throwing her whatever the fuck they are. And yeah, the finished product, when you put color over it, you almost don't notice the tone. That's cool how that turned out. And we get Jim's modified Kirby Crackle here. And around, he's very good at doing that, the energy blast stuff. And there's those shots with him dodging all the gunfire. Again, done with no extra rendering at all for the previous movements, and then just for the final one. Oh, this is cool. So the border here is all done with Sharpie. Again, maybe to give it just that extra bit of energy. I'm always curious about at what point the lettering is done. I think it's often between the penciling and the inks. Because obviously all this stuff is on the page. And who does the lettering on this? This is Patrick Brosseau. Okay, I'm not familiar with that. And now we're on to issue 277. This is the last of Jim Lee on Uncanny. Okay, so Tom Orzechowski on letters. Scott Williams, of course, on inks. All this stuff, super clean. And again, with not rendering through the blast, just the stuff outside of the blast. So this feels like a technique he's coming to just around now. A lot of extra blue line around here. Where it feels like he didn't, I don't know, maybe he didn't have a good grasp on the figure placement right away. Or just kept drawing gestural lines to try and keep movement going on it. Yeah, and then we get to the end here. All the lettering again pasted on. Onto the original though, as far as I can tell. Yep, because there's some blue line under Lila Cheney here. All this stuff appears to be micron, all these tiny, tiny lines. And then we get to, yeah, the end here, where Charles is all cocooned up. And it's pretty obvious, yeah, that he just kind of threw all sorts of textures on randomly to get that kind of techno feel to it. There's the great shot of Wolverine getting stabbed through the chest. So we got that one. That's nice. All this inking around here. There's a very deliberate sloppiness to it. I like it. And then when Wolverine's jumping Gambit here and Banshee does the scream, it looks like some of this ink was scraped off. And that's how you get that effect. Okay. Yeah, you can just see kind of like juddering against the ink here. And the final page, of course, with Possessed Colossus. Pretty good on the textures, eh? Jim Lee seemed to master that pretty quickly. And now, of course, we come to the show where everybody wanted to see, which is the collected covers of X-Men #1, which I'm pretty sure I'm not going to get 100% on the camera here. Pretty close. And of course, as individual covers, they're pretty good. None of them are really fantastic, but I mean, the point is to make 4 covers that have different guys on each one. As an overall composition, yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And of course, you get, as has been pointed out before, stuff like this flowing through, which feels pointless. These very quickly done lines, which feel completely unnecessary. Like, why'd you even bother with that? But this is all very well done. This is Jim Lee having pretty much locked everything down. And this is the issue, of course, where he's got it completely under control. And he gets to realize his, I think, vision of an action comic as well as he's really ever able to do. I'm not sure what this is for. I don't know if this is this is 3 separate boards. I don't know if this is a gatefold cover. It's not one of the regular issues. Yeah, I don't know what that's for. It's a cool piece. It's from the period just before Jim gets on, really. This is the Outback days during Silvestri. All right. Oh, and this is a promo piece for X-Men #1 with a lot of weird textures. I think this one is inked by Jim. I don't think Scott Williams had anything to do with this, because there's all sorts of weird stuff going on that Scott Williams wouldn't normally do. Like the unevenness of these lines here, that wouldn't happen. And putting the white out here for the shine. You can see where the line starts on these helmet hatches. And even stuff like Storm's jacket here. There's some odd texture work going on, and there's some mixed media stuff. And he hadn't come up with the leather jacket thing yet. Interesting. All right, so here we go. Issue 1. I think we get a fair bit of issue 1 in this. And there you go. That's pretty amazing. Just a full page devoted to Magneto. And he looks absolutely massive. And just, yeah, like perfectly rendered. Oh, the Corona here is done with whiteout, or white paint. Yeah, that is wild. And seeing things like the size of Magneto's head here. There's so many lines on Magneto's head. But that is like larger than my hand. Like I wouldn't even know how to draw a head that big. I think I have, well, I guess I have drawn one once, but that took some doing. Oh, we got the classic, yeah, issue 200 costume as well when he was trying to be a good guy. And another double page spread. I think there's a few in this. And again, Storm and Scott, just gigantic drawings of these guys. Look how quickly this was done. It's just outlines. Yeah, done with microns. Okay, get this out of the way so that I can spend some time with this thing. And we get the new, yep, this is going to be all the new costumes, including the ugly Jean Grey costume, which somebody said was like her sexy costume. It's like, really? With all the hip pockets? All right. Yeah, weird taste, bro. And just action shots all throughout. Every page. Even if this, like, we get a page that doesn't have any action on it, we're still going to get, yeah, like the full shot of Jean here and the big Xavier head. Uh-huh. Every page has somebody being cool. Somebody featured. This is the Rogue page. This is the Jean page. Here's the Colossus page. Here's the Wolverine page. Well, Wolverine page 1 of like 12 probably. Yeah, this all tone. It's crazy looking at this. This is a very intricate drawing. Again, fairly simple layout. It's really just 1-point perspective, but super effective and, you know, expertly rendered, because that's where Jim Lee really shines. Yep, more action, more slashing up robots. And look, like, just, I don't know, the surety of the form here. It's way more than stuff like this, which seems kind of stiff. You know, this is, what, like a year earlier? Year and a half? He's just absolutely locked it down here. Same here. There's no indecision. It feels like he's absolutely figured out the formula. And we got our classic shot of Wolverine busting up through here. And then coming up through the floor. And you know what? I thought this hand was photocopied. Looking at it, though, nope, I don't think it is. Because you can see the construction under here. Unless this is the one that's glued on. But it doesn't appear to be. I'm not seeing any kind of lines. So that's just, yeah, he just drew the exact same hand twice. Okay, that's allowed. Again, a lot of blue line here, where it's like he's not quite sure where everything goes. It's always interesting when you see that from Jim Lee. And I guess we got to have some story in this, right? It can't all be fighting. This is like the Rob Liefeld issue 1 plot treatment, where the first 21 pages of the book are training sequence. And then you kind of shove in some story towards the end. Oh, something got pasted over or whited out here. I think originally he wanted it as, that looks like it was hatched and then glued over with the Kirby crackle. And again, something was originally here, which was covered up. Again, always nice to see the blue line stuff underneath, the little construction lines. A lot of the time it gets erased. And here's our classic shot that was featured in the front papers and was put in several ads for issue 1. Again, not a ton to talk about on some of these pages, except for stuff like this, which is a ton of detail and would be pretty tough to draw with tiny little Magneto on the top here. Almost missed him. Nope, now we get our action shots. Magneto springs into action. Beast actually gets to do something. And it looks like he's gotten a better hang out of drawing feet here than he did in issue 269. That was one of the things I noticed. Like, man, that foot could be better. Or I don't know. I mean, it looks like a foot. It's just, that's kind of an ugly foot, man. No, he's figured it out by now. And again, all sorts of construction lines under here. You can see where the foot was originally, was more this way. And I decided, no, we need to do it this way instead. Get her stretching right out past the panel here. And this here turns into that. That's cool. I wonder how that's even done. Again, tons of line work in here, working all the skeletons into the water. Get the close-ups, get all the heavy-duty shadows. That's the thing. The amount of ink on these pages is always very satisfying. Now we come to here where Rogue gets hit by the missile. I mean, all this stuff here is done with, looks like toothbrush with some ink. And I guess he pretty exactly cut out the Rogue figure. Looks like he, penciled it out in blue because the ink stops right at the blue line. And then, yeah, like did a cutout over it. And then went like that and then removed the cutout again. Now we get our nice moody shot of Magneto here. When you get to stuff like this, I kind of wonder like how you even figure out where the shadows are. There seem to be so many shadows overlapping here. I mean, there's a ton of skill there. This is all Sharpie, the reflection. Ends up looking pretty. What does that look like in reproduced? I wondered if it had just faded over the years or something, but no, like it looks like it's pretty see-through here too. So I think that's, yeah, an intentional texture. Some of these shots here feel like they would have taken some work to figure out. Although Rogue here is a paste up. So that's interesting. Whatever he had before, he didn't like. Same with, what's this guy's name? Fitzroy or something? No, that's the bishop guy. I don't remember this guy's name. The leader of the Acolytes. He's also a paste up though. Done with. I mean, it looks like Sharpie and Micron. It's always cool seeing these versions. This is one of the reasons you want to get the artisan editions, because you can see just how many fixes the pros have to put in. Even the guys who are at the absolute top of their game and are the number one guys. There's always some extra little fixes they need to throw in. It's like, well, no, they didn't get it 100% right on the first try either. And I think that's an important thing to come away with this with. I think this is with like a sponge or something. And he probably just blocked the rest off here for a minute. Pretty good angle on this building, eh? And being pretty particular about what to show with the light. Again, just kind of good lessons. And we're finally at the end of issue 1. We got a fair bit of issue 1 in there. And we began with a giant-sized shot of Magneto. We should end with one as well. Look at the size of these eyes. Like, that's bigger than my thumb. That's kind of sick. All right, then we get to X-Men number 2. Again, gigantic head. All sorts of tone on this. From this stuff out here, completely different kind of tone here. I guess it's just, it probably ends around here. Different kind of tone here. And up here. Wow, that is a faded copy. Good thing I've got another one that's about as faded. And flipping through these earlier, it felt like this is where Jim Lee started slowing down a little bit. I think he picks it back up again. I don't know if he's getting bored with working with Chris Claremont on this and having to accommodate just all these fucking word balloons. Because we're not far off from when Chris Claremont leaves the book and leaves X-Men for the first time in like 20 years. But yeah, like this line work, not trying as hard on this. Part of that, I think, is Whilce is working on Uncanny and can't help him out anymore. Yeah, like this looks pretty good, just not quite up to the last issue. Same with this stuff. It's a good shot of, that's a tough angle on Colossus, and that looks all right. It's interesting because there's some stuff in here which looks like indie ink, and then these other hatches look like, again, Sharpie or Micron. Same with the lines on Banshee's Kate thing. I always wonder how much of this is, pre-planned. Like, okay, this line's going to be Sharpie, this line's going to be India ink. It feels like, you know, Scott Williams or Jim Lee or whoever's doing those particular lines know exactly what they're doing. Again, this Magneto not quite up to snuff from the last issue. It feels like he kind of blew his wad. Oh, now we get on to X-Men number 4. This is like one of the only issues from the early X-Men run I don't have, because it's a little too pricey to get a hold of. I do remember having it at the time, and, you know, thought a super-powered basketball game was just the coolest thing ever. As I was meant to. Interesting. This is a tone and not just lines drawn on. Some of these pages look like they aged kind of poorly. Like, I don't know what happened here. Somebody put down their coffee or something on here. But yeah, now we're into the John Byrne written issues now. You can see, you know, there's still enough talk going on, but it's not to the same level. All right, so now we're on issue 6. I missed issue 5 in there. So that's this guy here. And again, kind of a boring infiltration scene here. This is a bit better. It's page 15, so somewhere around here. There we go. Odd. From the finished product, I would have thought this was ink, but it doesn't look like it is. Unless it turned purple with age. Doesn't look like it would have. And this is Art Thibert inking, I think. Yeah, instead of Scott Williams. Okay, I mean, that could account for part of the different look. Like, Art Thibert on Jim Lee looks pretty good. Not quite as good as Scott Williams, and not quite as good as he does on Whilce Portacio. You know, like, some of these faces, not quite right. It's pretty close. And then we get to issue 7, and this is where stuff starts going downhill. Because this is going to be, well, here's issue 7. And this isn't penciled by Jim Lee anymore. This is Plot and Breakdowns by Jim Lee. And then Art Thibert does finishes. And we're going to lose something in the translation. Like, this is a pretty good forced perspective shot. Although Wolverine looks a little large compared to these guys, but that's okay. That one's pretty nice. Oh, it looks like we got it without the dialogue. Oh, the page numbers didn't match up. But yeah, no, if it ever had... So the dialogue, I assume, were paste-ups at some point and were either removed or fell off eventually. A lot of whiteout on these pages. Nice shot of Gambit here. Interesting tone around him everywhere. And yeah, kind of going for that Scott Williams thing, but not quite reproducing it to the same effect. Yeah, these are all pasted on as far as I can tell. So I guess it feels like they just kind of fell off this one. That's kind of crazy. And now we're on issue 8 here. This guy, terrible cover coloring. Why would anyone, why would you ever want to do gray around there? That's terrible. Nice shot to start with. That looks like that's mostly Jim. But again, he's going to be doing more breakdowns on this. Stuff like this looks pretty tightly penciled. It might just be a case of he started penciling normally. I don't know who Eric Smith is, but he got a few pages in this one. But yeah, he might have started penciling normally and then had to hurry it up as he went. So stuff like Charles's face here doesn't look quite right. Do we want to bet on whether or not we get the shot on Psylocke rising out of the water? We do not. You get Naked Rogue. You got to be happy with that. Yeah, this stuff looks like all Jim. All pretty good. Oh, man, look at how smudged that shit got, eh? Over the years. This is all 30-year-old, comic board. The fact that it all stays together as well as it does, for the most part, is pretty impressive. As this, issue 9. Okay. So this is the crossover with Ghost Rider that we didn't know we needed. And we get a vertical double page splash, which again, you don't get from Jim Lee too often. This almost looks abstract at this size. I don't think I had this one back in the day, so I don't really remember it. Every other issue I had up until here. And yeah, this page here looks pretty good, looks pretty finished. This one here, not quite right. Working off of all of Jim's proportions, which is important because Art Thibert can't get it quite right himself. But like faces, you know, Jim didn't do the full face, so Art Thibert had to pick up the slack and he couldn't quite get it. And I've never liked Jim Lee's version of Ghost Rider. Again, it may be partially because it's not 100% Jim Lee. It's also, you know, part Art Thibert. But, oh, and now we're getting to the end. Issue 10. The long shot issue. It's kind of a drag that this is how it ended. These issues were so lame, these two issues. And again, not completely drawn by Jim Lee, so like, you know. Anyway, from here, we go on to the covers, which is wild to see at full size. Now, the amount of lines on Wolverine here are impressive as hell. I like this cover a fair bit. I like it quite a bit more than this one. I've always thought this cover was kind of boring. The idea of it being iconic is like, what? I mean, the first page of this issue is so much more iconic than the cover. You know, that one there, that looks so much better. I mean, maybe it's because I saw it on a t-shirt first. I went, holy shit, that's like the best picture of Captain America I've ever seen. Yeah, they seem pretty well laid out. Just a little bit of white out here, but it's for effect. No patching that I can see. All this stuff is pasted up. So that's how they do it, where they cut out around the hair. This is pasted. This is pasted. And again, this one too. So Jim Lee's just drawing covers, not really taking into account where the logo has to be. Again, pretty good cover. Not his best. This one is a fair bit better. But you get Rogan or Savage Langmuir, so that's all that matters. This one does stand out pretty well. And you get one of those triangular compositions that he likes so much. And he does shoot for it fairly often, from what I understand. That was one of the things I took away from watching one of his live streams. When I was trying to figure out how the hell composition works. Jim Lee kept talking about triangles. It's like, okay, I guess triangles are good. And the classic X-Men versus X-Men fight. And we got this cover, yeah, and we got the cover for issue 4 here. Pretty good. Not as good as this one, though. This is maybe the best cover he's ever come up with. Oh, man, you imagine pasting everything around all this shit? Ew. Remove red lines and black lines. Yeah, that's tough. Man, it's a hell of a cover. Issue 6, Jim Lee and Art Thibert. Doesn't have quite the same oomph as if it was Scott Williams. I assume this is Scott Williams? Yep. And number 8. Okay, look at the, yeah. It's almost like charcoal or something. I don't know how you even achieve that. Doesn't look like dry brush exactly. And all the blue pencil stuff under here. It's interesting. Some of you can see them better than others. And the last Jim Lee cover. In my opinion, kind of low effort. But it's a shot everybody wanted. Where you get all the X-Men, right? So, this is a promotional piece for something. This is pure Jim Lee. It's always interesting the stuff Jim does on his own. Because he uses a lot of different techniques when it comes to inking. So all this stuff here is white media. And then spritzed on. Splattered on some of it, by the looks of it. Looks great. Yeah, the cartoonist kayfabe guys pointing out a lot of John Byrne in that face. Like, yeah, I think I have to agree. This is from, I believe, Alpha Flight number 89. So this is October of 1990. So this is after his first X-Men issue. Okay, that's good. I didn't know. I mean, I know he does some of the earlier Alpha Flight stuff. That's kind of where he got his start. I didn't realize he'd come back to it. Maybe just the cover. I'm not sure. And then we get some of the X-Men trading cards, which are done completely by Jim Lee, where he pencils and inks them. This is the actual size of the drawings. And when these came out, this was like everything I wanted out of cards. Like, Series 1 introduced me to Marvel Comics, essentially. Like, I'd known a little bit here and there, but I needed all these cards to figure out stuff about the characters and to get more into them. Series 2 introduced me to more artists. And then, by the time that came out, I'd read a few more comics, and I was ready for the X-Men series by Jim Lee. Get every X-Men character, and every character Excalibur ever thought up, apparently, to try and flesh this out to 100 different cards. So you're like, open up a pack and be like, oh man, who would I get this to? Oh, Cerise. I don't know who you are. But you get Jim Lee versions of everybody in the X-Men universe, essentially, including the X-Force guys. Yep, get another standard cool Magneto. Yeah, this is the main thing. Getting to see the original size. They are still kind of small, where it's tough to actually draw them at this size. So it's pretty impressive what he's able to get away with in a pretty small space. And stuff like this, where he's putting in a fair amount of detail in the backgrounds. Didn't try too hard on that one, or at least on the background. Paul Mounts can do that. But yeah, I mean, I can't get detail this tight at this size. That's fucking wild. Oh, and that is it. Oh, and that's our end page. Giant shot of Wolverine. Man, do those things ever look thick, eh? All right. So that is the Jim Lee X-Men Artist Edition. Hopefully I'll get another one someday. Does mean some saving up. And the problem is if you don't get them right away, they tend to go up after the fact, usually. But what can you do? So this is something, I use more for reference than anything. We're just okay, how do I make these lines and at what width, I suppose? What level of detail do I have to reach? Really, that fucking detailed for arm hair? Oh, yeah. So, I guess that'll wrap it up for this one. Thanks for sticking around. I think this is going to be a pretty long one. And, thanks for subscribing. Again, thanks for watching these things. 1,000 people subscribe. I must be doing something right. So, if you haven't subscribed yet, hit subscribe. We got to work on 2,000 now. But yeah, that's going to do it for this one. Thanks very much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know when the next one's coming out. Go over subscribe on my Patreon. That'll give you access to everything I do, from the Blood Force stuff to the YouTube stuff before it goes out to YouTube, as well as some Patreon exclusives. Also, you can follow me on Instagram and DM me there for commissions. One day there will be a Blood Force Artist Edition. One day. But not yet. Not yet. Thanks again, guys. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.